It started as a glamorous crossover, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City colliding with the crew of Below Deck Down Under. Champagne, sunshine, designer swimsuits, and endless ocean views. Everything screamed luxury and fun until Angie Katsanevas boarded the yacht. From the very first hour, the waves decided they weren't her friends. The motor yacht Katina rocked gently on the open water, but for Angie, it might as well have been a hurricane. She clutched her stomach, pale and sweating, trying to convince herself she could push through. But the camera caught it all. Angie wobbling near the railing, trying to smile, only to end up leaning over the side and throwing up. Seasickness wasn't just a momentary setback. It became her entire storyline. While her castmates laughed, danced, and flirted with the below-deck crew, Angie was down below deck, literally, lying flat on her bed, whispering to herself, "Don't move or you'll vomit." She later revealed in a Bravo HQ interview that she threw up 25 times that day. 25. "I had no idea how sick I would get on the yacht," she confessed. "It totally took me away from the first day of the trip. I literally had to stay laying like a corpse, or I would throw up." Captain Jason Chambers, ever the calm, rugged, and impossibly patient Australian captain, took notice. The man who's known for steering superyachts through chaos now found himself tending to a seasick real housewife who couldn't keep even ginger tea down. He brought her soup, he brought her tea, he brought her ginger. "Nothing made me feel better except his visits," Angie said. "I felt like I was in a 5-star hospital. He was so kind, like the good doctor was in the house." At one point, Jason even joked to the crew, "We might have to start charging extra for the medical care package." But behind his teasing, there was genuine compassion. Angie wasn't just sick, she was spiraling. And just when it seemed like she was finally recovering, fate decided to throw another curveball her way. But before we dive into the shocking chaos that followed, where things turned from seasickness to blood and panic, make sure you like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, what you're about to hear will have you saying, "No way that happened on camera." Now, let's continue. By the second day, Angie thought the worst was behind her. She woke up, smiled at her reflection, and told herself, "You survived the ocean." She had no idea the universe was preparing its next test. She teamed up with fellow guest Bronwyn Newport, both deciding it was time to lighten the mood. The two women came up with a wild idea, dressing up in inflatable costumes. Angie was a seahorse. Bronwyn was a shark. Their mission? Bring some humor and chaos to the crew. Laughter filled the yacht as they waddled through the corridors, bumping into walls, their costumes squeaking with every step. It was classic Housewives energy, dramatic, over the top, and utterly unfiltered. But that laughter would last only seconds. As they squeezed out of Angie's cabin, disaster struck. The heavy cabin door slammed shut with force, right onto Angie's hand. The sound was sharp, followed by Angie's scream that echoed through the yacht, "Oh my God, I'm in so much pain. Oh my God, I need the doctor." Bronwyn froze. For a moment, she thought Angie was joking, another bit for the cameras. But when she saw the color drain from Angie's face and blood start to drip, panic set in. "We have a medical emergency," she yelled, racing down the corridor. Chief Stew Daisy Kelliher was the first to respond. Still in her uniform, she turned, wide-eyed, as Bronwyn shouted the words no yachty ever wants to hear. Her hand got caught in the door. Daisy rushed to the scene, her training kicking in. Cameras followed her as she sprinted down the stairs, calling for Captain Jason on the radio. "Medical emergency. We need a kit right now." When she reached Angie, the sight was grisly. The inflatable seahorse costume was splattered with blood. Angie was trembling, clutching her injured hand, whispering, "I think I ripped my finger off." The footage was raw. Angie crying, Bronwyn near tears, Daisy trying to stay calm while rummaging through a first aid kit. "Oh my God, it's so much blood!" Bronwyn gasped. Captain Jason arrived moments later, composed but clearly concerned. He entered the saloon to find Angie in a puddle of chaos, a bloody hand, an inflatable seahorse, and a trail of panic-stricken housewives. Angie looked up, mortified. "Oh my God, it's me again. I'm so sorry." Jason tried not to laugh, his voice steady but amused. "It's all right, Angie. Let's just have a look." She winced as Daisy and Jason wrapped her finger. "What did I do to deserve this?" Angie groaned. "I'm the nicest one in this goddamn group." Bronwyn, trying to ease the tension, joked, "They'll never have us back. None of us can come back because of you." Jason smirked, shaking his head. "You're giving me more work than the whole crew combined." But beneath the jokes, Angie was hurting, not just physically, but emotionally. She felt guilty, embarrassed, and helpless. "I didn't want to take away from the trip," she later admitted in her confessional. "I felt terrible because everyone had to take care of me again. I was like, oh my God, I'm a liability." As her finger was wrapped and bandaged, the yacht settled back into an uneasy calm. The chaos faded, replaced by the low hum of the sea. But Angie's words hung in the air. Part apology, part realization. This wasn't how she imagined her dream Bravo crossover would go. Instead of glamorous dinners and cheeky yacht games, she'd spent 2 nights being treated by Captain Jason. First for seasickness, then for an injury. Even the crew felt for her. Mike, the new deck stew, later helped her get ready for dinner, styling her hair while her injured hand rested on a towel. Angie laughed through the pain, saying, "They were so kind to me. They were so sweet. They took such wonderful care of me." When asked later what she thought of her Below Deck Down Under experience, Angie didn't hesitate. 5-star review, she smiled. For the crew, for Captain Jason, for Daisy, everyone. They were incredible. But as fans know, Bravo crossovers never end quietly. There was still tension brewing among the housewives. The drama didn't stop at Angie's injury. Because while Angie was nursing her hand, whispers began circulating about what really happened behind closed doors that night, and why one of the housewives may have been secretly relieved that Angie had become the center of attention. As the sun set over the turquoise waters, the mood aboard the Katina shifted. The waves had calmed, but tension rolled through the air thicker than sea mist. Angie Katsanevas sat quietly at the dinner table, her hand bandaged, her glass of champagne untouched. She smiled for the cameras, but the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. The glamorous crossover had become a nightmare reel of seasickness, pain, and pity. And while the crew doted on her, not everyone at that table felt sympathy. Whispers began to swirl like a current beneath the surface. Bronwyn leaned over to another housewife, her voice just low enough to escape the microphones. "She's milking it," she murmured. "She knows the cameras love a victim moment." Across the table, another castmate rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, we all get seasick. She just made it her storyline." The words cut deeper than any injury. Angie heard enough to understand. The same women who had rushed to help her were now using her pain as gossip fuel. And on a yacht this small, there was no escaping the whispers. Chief Stew Daisy, sensing the shift, exchanged a look with Captain Jason. "Housewives' energy," she muttered, half amused, half wary. "You can smell it before it hits." Jason chuckled softly. "I can handle storms," he replied, "but Bravo storms, different beast." Downstairs, Angie excused herself from dinner. Her smile faded as soon as the cameras trailed behind her. She walked down the narrow hall, past the cabins, to the very door that had slammed on her hand. She stared at it in silence. The scene replayed in her mind like a cruel joke, the laughter, the pain, the blood. She whispered to herself, "What did I do to deserve this trip?" Moments later, Daisy appeared beside her. "Hey," she said gently, handing her a cup of herbal tea. "You don't have to prove anything. You had a rough go. That's life at sea." Angie smiled weakly. "I just didn't want to be the problem again." "You're not the problem," Daisy reassured her. "You're just the story this week." The two women laughed softly, the kind of laughter that comes from exhaustion more than humor. Meanwhile, on the upper deck, the rest of the housewives were in full confession mode. Wine poured, voices rose, and egos collided. Bronwyn, half tipsy, claimed she had saved Angie's life. "If I hadn't been there," she declared dramatically, "she would have lost her whole hand." Another housewife countered, "You were laughing when it happened." "Oh, please," Bronwyn shot back. "I panicked like anyone would." The crew, overhearing from a distance, exchanged knowing glances. For them, this was just another night at sea. Another group of guests turning dinner into a spectacle. But for Bravo fans, it was reality gold. Later, Captain Jason joined the women briefly, hoping to diffuse the chaos. "Ladies," he said, calm and commanding, "let's keep it light tonight, yeah? No one needs another accident." Bronwyn giggled. "Unless you're volunteering to save another housewife, Captain." Jason smirked. "I think I've used up my medical degree this week." Laughter followed, but Angie stayed quiet. Her hand throbbed, but it wasn't the injury that hurt anymore. It was the feeling of being the butt of the joke. In her Bravo HQ confessional later, she admitted, "I felt like the ocean was testing me. Like every time I stood up, it pushed me right back down. Seasick, injured, embarrassed. It was one thing after another. But I also learned something about myself out there. I can laugh, even when everything's going wrong." She paused, her voice softer. "And honestly, Captain Jason and Daisy, they were the real MVPs. I mean, the man brought me soup, tea, ginger, and still managed to smile through my chaos. That's grace." As the final day of the charter arrived, Angie stood on the deck watching the sunrise. A rare moment of peace after days of chaos. The water sparkled gold. The wind brushed through her hair, and for the first time she didn't feel sick. She looked out at the horizon and whispered, "I made it." Down below, Daisy packed up medical supplies with a grin. "No emergencies today," she said. Jason nodded. "Let's keep it that way." Bronwyn appeared with her morning mimosa, waving sheepishly at Angie. "Truce?" she asked. Angie smiled, lifting her coffee cup. "Truce, but next time I'm picking a spa, not a yacht." The women laughed, the tension finally dissolving into the sound of gentle waves. As the yacht pulled back toward the dock, Angie took one last look at the ocean. It had battered her, humbled her, and strangely enough, healed her. She'd gone from seasick to injured to empowered, all under the gaze of cameras and chaos. In her final confessional, she summed it up perfectly. This trip was supposed to be fun, and it was, in the most disastrous, unpredictable, unforgettable way possible. I'll never forget the kindness of that crew. I'll never forget Captain Jason trying not to laugh while I cried in a seahorse costume. And I'll never forget that even when everything goes wrong, it still makes great television.